It's Pride Month, and I wanted to talk a little about the labels that I use, because I think the more that we all understand each other, the better. But I also want to talk a little bit about why labels are important at all, and that's where we're going to start. There's a brilliant tweet last year from the account OMG I'm Autistic AF, which poses the rhetorical question, why do you need a label? Which is something that a lot of people ask, often quite dismissively. Their answer is, because there's comfort in knowing that you're a normal zebra, not a strange horse. Because you can't find community with other zebras if you don't know where you belong. And because it is impossible for a zebra to be happy or healthy spending its life like a failed horse. I think the sense of finding an identity, even if it's a label that changes, in fact, especially if it's a label that changes all the time, and even if it's not a label that you publicly wear, but it's something you understand about yourself, I think is incredibly important and valuable, and I encourage everyone to do it. When I was growing up in the 1980s, you could be gay or you could be straight. And that caused me a lot of confusion because I could never identify. I've never identified as straight or as gay. I've never thought of myself as being attracted only to one type of person. As I got older, I understood what bisexuality was. And for a long time, bi was a label I would wear. But thanks to the struggle and work and thinking of millions of people all over the world, there's now a broader range of labels to choose from and to think about, and how they apply to you. For me, I like a bunch of different words to describe me. I like queer. It is a defiant word. It's a reclaimed word. And not everybody does, especially older gay and lesbian and bisexual people don't like queer because it was a slur. I like that word. I still use bi as a descriptor, especially if I'm talking to a general audience that isn't as well versed in queer theory and the range of different identities that are out there, but also because it does still fit me. It feels okay. I actually tend to prefer the term bi plus. It is, for me at least, more explicitly an umbrella term that takes in a lot of different multi-gender attracted identities, but bi or bisexual is fine. The label that actually most suits me, though, is omnisexual. And it's a bit of a clunky phrase, and it still sounds a bit weird even to my ears. I don't love using the word, but as an identity, it is closest to what I experience. So a lot of people know bisexual as an identity, and a bunch of folks will have heard of pansexual. Let's skip the gags. And pansexual was seen by some as being a more progressive version of bisexual. There is a school of thought that suggests that bisexual means attraction to men and to women, and so that it is exclusionary of trans or intersex or gender non-conforming people of all different stripes. The understanding was that pansexual perhaps meant a more inclusive label for people who are multi-gender attracted. That thinking, that bi is trans exclusionary and pan is trans inclusionary, is no longer in vogue. It arguably never was true. For most people, the definition of bisexuality these days means attraction to your own gender and other genders. That's the bi in bisexuality, your own gender and other genders. I've never identified as pansexual, even though in theory it should apply to me. I mean, the definition pretty much is attraction to people regardless of their gender. And that should be me, because across either a sexual or a romantic axis, I can be attracted to people of any gender. But specifically pansexual these days is usually defined as meaning the gender plays no part in the kind of attraction you have to somebody. And that's not me. I am attracted to different people in different ways, and those different ways often align with their gender. And so typically with women, I tend to be on the demisexual spectrum, the grey spectrum, which is to say that usually I don't just see a woman and want to have sex with her. There has to be a emotional or intellectual bond or excitement before I feel sexual feelings for women. And that's not true for me with men. And I tend to find that the more somebody who's gender non-conforming or gender non-binary, the more they align with male or female, the more my attraction tends to follow those rules, although that's not always true. And so somebody who's NB, non-binary, I don't know how I'm going to react when I see them. I don't know what my attraction, I can't predict what my kind of attraction to them will be. And so that is omnisexual. It means attraction to people regardless of gender, but the gender of the person you're attracted to has a significant bearing in the kind of attraction you have to them. And so I think I certainly, and we as a society, have come a long way from the understanding of bisexuality as meaning attraction to men and to women. Bi people make up by far the largest group of queer LGBTQ plus people, and yet bi people still are ostracised often by both gay and by straight people, and their experiences are often negated by erasure, is the phrase, in media, but also just in society in general. And that creates a particular problem, which is I think that a lot of people struggle to understand what bisexuality, bi plus identities are, and whether they apply to them. There are a lot of men in particular who identify as straight, but who still have sex with men, but they still identify as straight. There's a lot of talk in queer communities about bisexuality in particular being a spectrum. The idea that you are not required to be 50% attracted to men and 50% attracted to women in order to call yourself bisexual if you'd like to. It may be that you have so there are, again, a bunch of different phrases we can use here. A common one is bisexual hetero-romantic, which suggests that you can be sexually attracted to men and to women or to multiple genders, but that you might only be romantically attracted to people of a gender other than yourself. Typically, of course, we're talking about men who marry women, women who marry men, but who might also have sex with people of their own gender, but it can be more complex than that, richer than that, rather than more complex is a better way of putting it. And so classically we think of a spectrum that runs between 100% gay and 100% straight, and that your bisexuality might be somewhere on that spectrum. And that's okay as far as it goes, I think. That is, it's a bit like Wittgenstein's ladder, this idea of you need to understand one thing before you can understand the next thing, before you can understand the next thing, but actually the previous rungs in the ladder are often wrong. Terry Pratchett famously called this lies to children. In fact, no, it was Ian Stewart and Jack Cohen, who he did a collaboration with for Science of Discworld, called this lies to children, which is a phrase I love. They're lies to children in the sense that they're not actually actively lies, and they're certainly not intended to deceive, but they are things you tell somebody who knows less than you do in order to be able to bring them to the same level of knowledge and experience that you have. And so this idea of bisexuality as a spectrum between 100% gay and 100% straight is fine because it can help you understand yourself and help you understand that you don't have to be in the middle to call yourself bi. But actually there are other axes across multiple different orientations and identities that can help you make sense of your identity. And so I encourage people who are questioning their identity to understand that you can apply many different labels to yourself at once. And that they can change day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, and that's completely fine. In fact, it's not just fine, it's brilliant. I love seeing people with the language and the confidence to describe their fluid sexuality and romantic interests and gender identity and everything else alongside it. It's a joyful thing to be able to know yourself and to be able to communicate that self authentically with people out there in the world. And so I guess I don't have the hubris to suggest I have a message for Pride Month, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the labels that I use so that you can get to know me better. But I also wanted to encourage you to examine the labels that might apply to you, to take joy from knowing that you're not a failed horse, that you are a zebra, as the actually Autistic AF tweet put it. Find yourself, express yourself. Take joy in yourself, and then take joy in the community around you and the people you love and the people you want to have sex with. Love and sex are great. Pride is great. You're great. Go and have fun.